All right, so this I write for the California Diver News, a monthly article about Monterey area, and I was asked to present on that at the Scuba show last weekend, and this is the presentation that I gave. So, you know, a number of the folks in this meeting probably have as much or more, dive information about Monterey that as I do. So as you're watching the presentation, maybe you could, at the end, maybe you could give me some suggestions about, what worked and what didn't work. So anyway, let me dive into it. All right. So this photo. So I never take selfies of myself underwater. However, one of them happened by accident, and this is the accident. So anyway, my camera was a little, tangled up in the kelp, and I accidentally took a picture of myself getting the camera untangled. Okay, so why Monterey? So, one of the big things right now is forest bathing, in actual, on land forests. But, in this case, we can actually bathe and get wet and be in a kelp forest. So, I mean, it's taking forest bathing to the next level. You can basically see a sea lion ballet happen in front of you. We have Pacific sunfish. And because we have, the reason we have Pacific sunfish is the next item is jellyfish. They're there for the jellyfish. Back in 1961, there was an event that happened in the Monterey Bay where that the movie The Birds was taken from. So there was some crabs that got this disease, and the birds ate them, and birds all got kind of wonky, and they started running into cars and buildings. And anyway, that's where the movie The Birds, the book and the movie The Birds came from. So I thought it was kind of appropriate that it came from Monterey Bay. We have a lot of nudibranch species in the area, so if you're into that sort of thing. Also,
so by the way, I have a question. So I saw some pictures at one of the photo competitions a year or two ago with huge numbers of jellyfish. Are those something that occasionally spike up to very large numbers?
Yeah, there's probably, like, in the fall time frame is a fair bit of jellyfish action.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's typically when I've seen large numbers of them. Like,
okay.
August, maybe September timeframe.
Do they vary much from year to year?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. So, some years we get more and some less.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure. We have rockfish, big schools of rockfish, and they're very receptive to you, like, joining the school and swimming with them. They don't swim off. They're, like I said, they're okay with you being a member of their school. There are a lot of shore diving opportunities in Monterey, and, well, you can also do boat dives too. But that's kind of nice that there is a lot of shore dives. The wolf eels are a lot of fun. We have anemones that are, 3 foot tall. And the last item there's just about anything you can, there's just a variety of different things that you'll see, just random things. So you can't dive the whole time. There are things that you can do when you're not diving. Whale watching, obviously. There's some new things going on now. So some of the whale watching boats are also doing great white shark watching, and they have combo trips. You can go out for whale watching, early, and then later in the day you can go out for the white sharks. Redwood forests are nearby. We have stunning coastline that starts kind of in Monterey area and goes down to Big Sur. There's creeks and rivers. If the ocean conditions are not ideal, a lot of times I'm snorkeling in creeks, trying to spot trout or salmon or what have you. And of course, you have otters.
So what about can you go back to the great white shark watching? I wouldn't have thought that they were common enough that you'd run into one on some kind of a whale watching boat. I mean, do they chum for them, or how are they getting them to?
No, they do not chum for them, as far as I know.
How are they finding them?
Well, they're actually somewhat predictable. So about this time of year, let's say, late May, early June, they'll start to come into kind of, the Capitola area, let's say.
Okay.
And they'll stay. These are juvenile ones. They're like 7, 8, 10 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
You're maybe up to teenagers kind of.
Yeah.
And for maybe roughly 3 months they'll be there, and they're
in the exact same place every time, or what?
Yeah, I mean the boats, the shark watching boats will go to. They often hang out around the cement ship, and in that general area, you can see them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bruce, how do you know that otters are named Harry?
Well,
are you trying to talk about how fussy they are? I think that's Hairy.
Well, I kind of wanted it that way. Hairy otters. We have a coastal trail that's 18 miles long, and so many of the dive sites many of the shore dive sites are actually right next to the coastal trail. And so what happens is there's a lot of visitors that kind of go, biking, hiking, walking, running, what have you, on this trail, and they see me and my buddies gearing up to dive, and they often have lots of questions. And so my presentation is basically answering those questions of the visitors. So the questions, so anyway, before I get to the questions, this is kind of how I want to recommend that people go and see the Cannery Row from the water. So these are the sort of questions I get asked about, from visitors. It's like, how cold is the water? Well, the water is roughly 47 degrees to 58 degrees. However, if you were to roll a dice, and most of the time the dice is going to come up 52 degrees. So, and it doesn't really matter what time of year. It could be in the middle of January, or it could be the middle of July. You roll the dice, and most of the time it's going to come up 52 degrees. So what's the visibility? Visibility, it varies a lot. What I do is I look, I'm kind of like the anti-surfer. So I go to the surf websites that kind of have the swell report, and I look for conditions that are calm and cold. Those are the best conditions for diving. So the surfers are out there looking for big waves, and I'm looking for no waves. And so if I can kind of pick days that are cold and calm, then I have a better chance of visibility being good. That being the case, a good day is 60 feet visibility. Kind of an average day, let's say 15 feet, 20 feet. What do you see? Well, the rest of my presentation is going to talk about that, so I'll postpone that. They see my camera that I'm setting up, and so they have a lot of questions about the camera. So I shoot with a Panasonic GH5. I have strobes, obviously, and for macro I use a snoot, and for wide angle I have, I have an 8mm fisheye lens that I usually use for wide angle. Where to dive? That's going to be answered in the rest of the presentation as well. What to wear? Some people wear, let's say, roughly a 7mm wetsuit. It's a little bit chilly to do that. I personally wear a dry suit, and I have quite a bit of warm clothing underneath the dry suit, and so anyway, that's what I wear. And then, as I'm setting up and talking to these visitors, often sharing stories, and so some of those stories will be in this presentation. So we have a war going on right now. One of them, so we have urchins versus kelp. So these purple urchins on the left are, starting in 2013, we had a die-off of, I think, 13 species of starfish. One of them in particular, which is the sunflower star, is a very serious consumer of these urchins, and so that losing 99% of the sunflower stars was really detrimental. And what happened is the purple urchin population just skyrocketed. There's kind of a mix of situations in the Monterey area. Some of the areas are really taken over by the urchins, and some are doing fairly well, as opposed to further up north, like Fort Bragg area or something like that, where the kelp is just almost non-existent. So anyway, let's continue. So anyway, this is one of the sun stars. It's a little one. I think I took this photo in 2014. It's a very small one. So my favorite place is Monterey Beach. It is a shore dive, or you could do it by boat too, but it is a shore dive. There are 3 sites in one. So there's a north, there's a middle, and there's a south. My personal favorite is the north end of Monterey Beach. It is a very steep beach, and it's very dangerous. So checking the swell report is super important. What can happen here is you could get into the surf zone, and you could just get tumbled, and you really have to have your regulator in your mouth when you're going in and out of the surf.
And clamp.
So the big draw here is, number one, is the kelp canopy. The kelp is beautiful. I mean, as you can see the pictures on the right there. There's, when the light's streaming through the kelp, and you're kind of surrounded by blue rockfish, it's magical. So the thing that's really good about Monterey Beach is the Carmel Trench is very close to shore. It comes the closest of anywhere to shore is this location. So you can swim out. You can have a reasonably short swim, and you could be in hundreds of feet of water. I mean, for us, if you're not doing technical diving, we kind of probably should limit our dives to 130 feet. But the thing is, with that trench there, you get a fair bit of clean water coming up from clean cold water coming up from the trench, and there's also a lot of pelagic species that kind of visit there. So once again, some more typical monastery beach scenes. So the photo on the left is a electric torpedo ray. So I spotted that in Monastery at one point in time, and it was kind of like a puppy dog. It wanted to get close to me, and I knew that it was dangerous. It's got 45 volts of DC, and I've been told that if you get zapped by it, it feels like being hit by a baseball bat. So, like I said, it was kind of like a puppy dog, and it was kind of following me around, and it made me a little bit nervous, but it was kind of a nice find. The photo on the left, once again, it's, pelagic species in the area. This is my photo that I call taking a bubble bath with a mola mola. This photo on the left is kind of give you just some perspective. Those are giant kelp, and they're probably 80 feet tall, is a rough guess. So the photo on the left is kind of an interesting situation. I was at Monastery, and I came across these two lingcod, and they were perched on these big pieces of granite, big giant granite boulders. There's one on one boulder and one on another boulder. So I decided to go up to the first one, the one on the right there, and take its picture, because I thought it looked really picturesque. And so I prepared to do that, and the one from the other boulder comes over and wants to get in on the picture. And it starts this epic fight. The two of them are just fighting over who gets to get their picture taken. And, moments after this, there's just kind of a big cloud of, debris that's the results of their fight. I thought it was pretty hilarious that they were fighting over getting their picture taken. And then, on the right, once again, those big giant blue rockfish skulls are just fantastic. So there's a couple fish that I haven't seen before, and I've only seen them at Monastery. The one on the left is a clingfish, and the one on the right is a long-fin sculpin. I've actually seen the long-fin sculpin twice at Monastery Beach, and it's it's one of my favorite finds. Off to Point Lobos. It's a state park. Reservations are required. It's the only place in the Monterey Bay Area that you have to reserve to do diving. And they only let like just a few divers in a day. It is a shore dive. It's very easy entry and exit. There's tons of kelp here. Kelp is very, very healthy here. Basically, it's kind of at the southern end of Monterey, and if you go any further south, you start getting into Big Sur area. Because it's at the southern end, you do see some Southern California visitors, like sheephead and fish like that. So the nice thing about Point Lobos is the top side, there's a lot of very, very beautiful scenery on the right-hand side there. And like I said earlier, one of the things you see, the sheephead, which is more commonly a Southern California fish, but they do show up here. San Carlos Beach. So it's a shore dive. It's very easy entry and exit. There's actually 6 dive spots in one here. So you can dive the wall, you can go out and see the sea lions / cormorants, you can go to the middle reef, you can do the pipeline, you can go past the pipeline and see the Metridian fields, and there's also a barge wreck. There's lots of food, hotels, shops, parking, hot showers, cold showers. You got the the best underwater photo shop in the world is there, Backscatter. And you can see just about anything at San Carlos Beach. The species diversity is really, really high here. For example, even, the thing on the left is a circlid worm. So even the worms are really beautiful. And there's lots of nudibranch species. One example is on the right there. Another nudibranch is the hooded nudibranch, or the lion's mane. That's you can see that at San Carlos Beach as well.
Part of a Venus flytrap.
Yeah, it looks like a Venus flytrap, doesn't it? And you do see some, those are blacksmiths on the right there, and the kelp at San Carlos Beach is pretty healthy as well. The fish on the left is a oh, forgot what it is now.
Big-lipped something.
No, it's not. I'll think of it in a second. Monkey face prickleback. If you get really close to where the water's hitting the wall at the breakwater, this is kind of what you'll see. There's a lot of the ochre stars and kelp. Really beautiful. Photo on the left is a seal. It's a baby seal, actually. So there's a story I wanted to share with that. Just kind of a reminder. One of the things, if you do a night dive at San Carlos Beach, and I actually do, most of my dives are actually night dives. I do my diving after work typically on the weekdays. And what happens is there is a particular seal that lives out there. Some people call him Chewy, some people call him Jorge, some people call him George. But what he does is he follows you around when you're diving, and he uses your dive light to hunt with. So what you're doing is, you're getting ready to take a picture of this really beautiful octopus, and Jorge will go in there, grab the octopus, stir up all the sediment, and then take off. So
Bruce?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, we called him Snoopy.
I think I've heard that as well. So, I mean, clearly it's not the same seal that is from the 80s, but I think there's multiple of these seals that have existed over time. And in general, there's not a whole lot of seals at San Carlos Beach. There's a lot more sea lions, and that's what you see on the right-hand side. That's a sea lion kind of looking in my dome. I think it's looking at its reflection in my dome port and being entertained.
So Bruce, when you say you do night dives during the weekday, do you live in Monterey County?
No, I live in Santa Cruz County, but
Okay.
But anyway, I'll just go over there to dive on the weekdays.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned before, the performance the seals put on the left there it's just amazing. They do pirouettes around you, they spin, they blow bubbles, and it's just it's like being at the ballet, basically. The photo on the right is I think there's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe it's 5. There's 5 cormorants. So they're kind of like in this little formation, and they're, I was there at one point in time, and I think these are young ones actually, and I think the parents were told all the young ones, hey, you got to go out and like, entertain yourself and do some training and learn about how to get by in the world. And so we probably had my buddy and I probably had, I don't know, 40 of these cormorants just diving around us, and they were tasting everything. They wanted to taste our dry suit, our hood, our gloves, our camera. And then they would look into the camera and see the reflection, and they'd have these goofy looks on their face, like here on the left. The one on the right crashed into me. Like I said, these are young cormorants. I think they were not very skilled yet at navigation. And it was a blast. It was, one of my most memorable dives. Now on to one of the other spots, Middle Reef of San Carlos Beach. There's a lot of nudibranchs out in that area. There is a patch of kelp. And that's the one thing about diving in Monterey is if you want to know where to dive, you just look where the kelp is. So you look the kelp, you go down, there's rocks. The kelp has to be connected to rocks. And so there's usually, interesting stuff around the rocks and the kelp. So it's actually fairly easy to figure out where to dive. You just, like I said, you look for the kelp. The photo on the left. So if you're going to be diving in Monterey, there's about 5 different species of yellow nudibranchs. They all look very similar to each other. This one actually happens to be the mimic dorid, so it mimics one of the other yellow ones. And anyway, so you're going to see a lot of yellow and orangish nudibranchs, and they're all pretty similar looking. But there is about 5 different species. On the left, there's it's a flatworm, and on the right is a young cabezon.
Bruce, on the slide before, what was the nudibranch that was on the right?
Oh, that is a that one kind of escaped me just now.
Mackenzie, I think it's a purple one.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul, you are the new Monterey expert, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to get back to you on that one.
That's fine.
Kind of
I'm
escaped
like,
me.
ooh, I haven't seen that one before.
It's
That's cool.
I think its genus name is Chromodorus, and I'm trying to remember the species.
I've got it. It's Chromodorus McFarlandae, or its common name McFarland's chromodord.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's not something I see very often, but I have seen it a couple times. San Carlos Beach, for example. Another dive spot is the barge wreck. I don't have any pictures of the barge itself. I mean, the barge is really kind of not very, it's kind of, it's thrashed. There's not much to it, but it is a good spot to find like octopus and fringe heads and stuff like that. But on your way out to the barge wreck, you're going to go across some sand. The sand is the home to these rainbow nudibranchs on the left. These are actually quite large. They can get about the size of, let's say, maybe a small bread loaf. And then they're there because of the thing on the right, which is the tube anemones. So the rainbow nudibranchs feed on the tube anemones. You also, as you're crossing the sand, you'll see a lot of flatfish. This one happens to be a sand dab, I believe, and of course more nudibranchs as well, like the Spanish shawl on the right.
What's the navigation to get out to the barge? How far out is it too?
It's a pretty good swim. There is, I think you kind of go out to like about the, let's see, about the number 9. So there's numbers on the wall. They go from like 1 to 13, and then once you go past 13, then you're kind of out in the, let's say, the sea lion area. I think you kind of hit out like around 9-ish and then turn away from the wall at about a 45-degree angle. And basically you want to look for a rope that is, one end's tied to the barge and the other end I think is tied to the wall or something like that. You want to find this rope and follow the rope out there to the barge.
Oh, there's a rope that goes all the way from the wall out to the barge.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if it connects to the wall or,
It's pretty close.
but it does connect to the barge.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, the trick is finding that rope. And then once you find the rope, then you're going to be hitting, it's going to be at a different angle than, let's say, 45 degrees. I mean, those are kind of approximate. I could probably give you some better directions.
What is
Like-
that that's in front of the Spanish shawl up the hill from it? It's the pink thing?
That looks like the white part kind of looks like some nudibranch eggs.
Well, it looks like there's an eye about a quarter of the way in from the left on the top. Almost like an eye.
Yeah, I don't think it's an eye. I think it's, I
it's
think
just-
that red thing is a piece of like red kelp, kind of the, I don't have a pointer or anything here, but
Yeah, no, I'm pointing with my my cursor on it so you know you guys can't see it.
yeah, that red thing that kind of looks like a leaf, that's kind of leaf shaped, I think is just a leaf of red kelp, but the white stuff might be nudibranch eggs.
You're talking about
That's
the real
still
white
that.
stuff on on the far left.
What's that?
You're talking about the real white stuff that's
Yeah, it's kind of to the left
far left from the red.
from the
leafy
red.
thing.
Yeah, it's kind of left and maybe below it as well. I'm thinking that might be nudibranch eggs. I could get the original photo and blow it up and look at it or something and see what it looks like. But I don't think it's an eye on the far right though. I think it's just like, I don't know, a piece of,
On the far left.
oh, on the far left. Oh,
Yeah. So like if the Spanish Hall is headed right for it, if it continued up the hill, there's what looks like the white part you're talking about. If you go to the right of the white part, like it's like this thing with the eye is touching the what looks like the white eggs,
yeah. I don't think it's an eye.
but it might not be an eye.
The nightlife, there are a lot of octopus at San Carlos Beach, and they typically come out at night. The octopus that we have here are this one on the left happens to be a red octopus. We do have giant Pacific octopus. I personally have only seen them from a paddleboard in Point Lobos from the surface. And then once I saw it, I went back and dove that location numerous times to try to find the octopus, the giant Pacific octopus, and I was unsuccessful. Because I hear that they basically hang out in a pretty small area for all of their life, which is about, I don't know, like 4 years or something. So anyway, that's a red octopus. There's lots of them at San Carlos Beach. The thing on the left, on the right rather, is a sailfin sculpin, which is really only comes out at night as well. Another one of the dive sites that's at San Carlos Beach is, if you follow the pipeline out, there's a Metridium field. A little bit of false advertising here. The Metridium on the left, I doubt you'll see that particular species out at the Metridium field. We have 2 different species of Metridium here. It's a smaller one. the one on the left is the smaller one, and the one on the right are the ones that get to 3 feet tall, and those are the ones you'll see at the Metridian field. Del Monte Beach. So it's a shore dive. It's very easy entry and exit. It's next to wharf number 2. Basically, this is muck diving. So there's no need to travel to Lembe Strait or Indonesia. You can do muck diving right here in California. And what you're going to see, some of the things you're going to see here, there's a lot of species of shrimp that are in that area. Blade shrimp, there's tons of different blade shrimp. There's lots of different nudibranch species, and the big royal find, hence the red carpet on the right, is fringe heads. That happens to be a yellow fringe head. There are 2 other fringe heads that you might see. There is the one spot fringe heads on the left, and there's a sarcastic fringe head on the right. So those are kind of the big draw for Del Monte Beach area. Example on the left here is that's a blade shrimp, and there's just a wide variety of different colorations of these blade shrimp. This one happens to be taken, I took the photo through a piece of plumbing pipe that kind of gives the swirly effect. So it's just a piece of, well, drain pipe from your sink that's shiny on the inside. And of course, that's a nudibranchs. Around this time of year, you'll actually, the place could just be littered with the Hermesinda crassicornis nudibranchs on the right. And of course, there's a lot of octopus that hang out in that area. So the wharf 2 that I mentioned earlier, that's kind of right next to Del Monte Beach, that's a picture of it. As we were talking about earlier, you can get jellyfish swarms that are this thick in, let's say, August, September timeframe. On the right is my wife. She's on a paddleboard, and I'm kind of snorkeling and taking the pictures. She claims that I use her as bait for different photos. So this photo kind of reminds me of a dive that I did at not Del Monte, at the breakwater, which is San Carlos Beach. So I was in jellyfish this thick, and the nice thing, one of the benefits of cold water diving is virtually every part of your body has something on it. You've got a hood, you've got gloves, you got a dry suit. I was able to navigate through this jellyfish swarm, like it was basically this thick, and did not get a single sting. So I did that. I was getting out of the water. As a good diver, I stood up. I took my fins off. I'm getting ready to walk through the surf zone. And like I said, as a good diver, I put my regulator back in my mouth as you walk through the surf zone. And I didn't realize it, but there was tentacles of the jellyfish on my regulator, and I got them in my mouth. So basically, I got a fat lip for, a good part of a day. I mean, it wasn't.
I had that happen once too.
On your regulator?
I would have thought that you'd get stung like parts of your face that are outside your mask and maybe between your regulator and your mask. But that doesn't happen to you normally?
Well, you could. Obviously, those are bare skin exposed. And,
right.
I was able to navigate through the jellyfish without getting any stings around my face until, like I said, I was walking through the surf zone after putting my regulator back in my mouth.
I
One
think one
time-
of the things that might have helped is if he blows the bubbles out of his regulator, that probably keeps the jellyfish away from his face.
Maybe.
Because
That's
the
true.
bubbles are going up around his mask.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Stillwater Cove. This is another one of my all-time favorite places to dive. It's typically a boat dive, but I am kind of cheap and I do kayak dives. So if you've never done a kayak dive, what you do is I have a kayak that has like a tank well in it. And so I put my BC and my tank together. I put them on the kayak in the tank well, and then I bungee strap them down. And then I do the same thing with my fins and my weights and my camera. Everything gets strapped down. And then I'm in my dry suit. And I paddle out to where I want to go. And there's two ways that I have to I have an anchor I've used in the past. And the other option I have is basically like rope connected to the not the equivalent, they actually are clamps that you use for like a jumper cables. So jumper cable clamps. And so what I do is I just clamp onto the kelp, and that works pretty well. And so one of my dive buddies is saying, oh, there's this great place to see wolf eels out, well, let me back up a little bit. Let me go through these bullets here. So there's very easy entry and exit. It's on 17 Mile Drive. So you actually have to pay to get access to 17 Mile Drive, which is a beautiful drive. The next point is ocean access. So a lot of the places we talk about are in the bay. They're in like Carmel Bay, or maybe they're in Monterey Bay. This actually, you can get out to the ocean. And so, this spot, one of my dive buddies was talking about that had wolf eels, it was actually out on the ocean. So my buddy and I got in our kayaks, we paddled out there, we tied we clamped our kayaks to the kelp, and then we tied our kayaks together, and we went down in and we did a dive, and we had perfect navigation. We came up right where the kayaks used to be. So when we popped up, we could see the kayaks, then they were just going over the horizon. And so we said, well, we can't catch up to the kayaks. So we started to swim back to shore. It took us 2.5 hours to get back to shore. We got back to shore, and my buddy had his iPhone in his car, and my iPhone was in a dry bag on my kayak. And so we said, find my phone. And so we see it show up on the map. It's out in the middle of Carmel Bay, and it's heading, and then we watch it for a little while and goes, oh, look, it's heading toward Point Lobos. So we hop in the car, we drive over to Point Lobos, which is about, maybe 4 miles as the crow flies. And we get over there, and we're looking at our watch. Point Lobos is a state park, and it closes at sunset. And we're like thinking to ourselves, these kayaks are not going to get here before sunset. And so we're just about ready one of us to dive into the water, swim out there, and drag the kayaks back. But then we see the fire department is just coming back from like rescue training. And so they have one of these Zodiacs out there, and we go down and we talk to the guys, and it turns out that one of our dive buddies is out there, and they say, hey, would you mind rescuing our kayaks? And they went out and they rescued our kayaks. So we got both kayaks back and my iPhone back, and we have a story to tell.
So what had happened to the kayaks? Had they just broken free from the kelp?
They did. What happened is, while we're underwater, the waves and the wind kind of kicked up, and when we hit the surface, it's like, wow, this was a little different from what we started our dive. And yeah, they were tied. They both kayaks were still tied together, and they were trailing a ribbon of kelp.
And that's to say that method of just using jumper cable clamps is not secure for high wave or high wind conditions.
I guess so. I mean, we've done it a number of times, and it's been successful, and that was the only failure we've ever had.
I see. Okay.
So
You're lucky the
because
wind wasn't taking them out into the middle of the Pacific, I guess, but
yeah, it was fortunately it was pointing them toward Point Lobos.
yeah.
So this is the reason we went out there, is because the one on the left is a juvenile, and the one on the right is an adult. So they've got a lot of character. And then the health, some of the areas over there in Stillwater Cove are this very healthy in terms of kelp and so forth. And being out on the ocean, you get things like moon jellies passing through. And some of the little stuff is beautiful too. For example, an acorn barnacle on the left, and the little strawberry anemone on the right. And this is kind of a similar sort of thing that you're going to see in the area. Virtually every square millimeter of the rock is covered in invertebrates. And now we come to the surface interval. So once you're done diving, you can go to the park and in redwoods, or you could snorkel in the creek like I do. And then if you don't want to do the boats that take you to the great white sharks I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you can do it yourself. My wife once again on the paddleboard. By the way, her paddleboard is 9.5 feet long. That shark is slightly larger than her paddleboard. We had about a dozen sharks around us this day, and the sharks were a little curious. We got nudged a couple times on our boards, and anyway, that's one of the things that we like to do. But he said, if you're not quite that adventurous, there are the boats that take you out to this very same spot, and you can see the white sharks as well.
Bruce, you didn't get a split of that one?
No, I didn't. I didn't have my underwater housing with me.
Good excuse. Good excuse.
That would have been an awesome picture if the visibility was good, though.
Yeah, the visibility was was okay. I mean, that area is not known for really. I mean, that's over in kind of Capitola area, and it's not known for being great visibility over there. So, but that was actually a fairly decent day for that area. And then another thing is, if you happen to be visiting Monterey around Valentine's Day, the California newts are mating. So you can visit some of the creeks and ponds that have these newts mating in them. So that's the end of my presentation. Any questions?
One question I had was, in one of your previous pictures, it looked like your wife was wearing a coat that was not intended to go in the water. I guess I'm talking much earlier in your presentation.
Well, she's good at paddleboarding.
Yeah, there we go. That's the picture. So am I correct that her board is stable enough that she doesn't have to worry about falling in, or?
Well, she's a very capable paddleboarder. I mean, she's actually a stand-up paddleboarder yoga instructor.
Oh, okay.
She can do yoga on her paddleboard.
Wow.
and teach other people how to do that as well.
Wow.
So she's very stable on our board.
Okay.
Until you get knocked in by a shark or something.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, there's that. That's
Okay.
excitement. So anyway, any thoughts on the presentation as to fact checking, any suggestions? I mean, my guess is I will likely do this every year. Do a similar sort of presentation every year at the Scuba show.
Hmm.
I think
I
I
thought-
would add lovers.
What's that?
I would add lovers.
Lover's Point.
Yeah, yeah. My wife said the same thing. Says, "Oh, you didn't mention Lover's Point."
What question I had, because these seem to all sort of been shore dives. I mean, for example, some of the pinnacles, like Eric's Pinnacle, and things that that you would normally do through a boat dive. Particularly for if you're doing the the scuba show. I mean, do you have any of that, or you do that, or?
Well, I could include that, in a future presentation or something like that. But yeah, most of the stuff I talked about is shore dive, and I mean the one exception I think is Stillwater. I mean that's doing that without a kayak or a boat. Swimming out there would be really
Long way. Yeah.
would be really a big swim.
Your question about what do you see really got me thinking, because I often will be talking about diving to non-divers around here. As I just mentioned that dive, and I'm like, well, what do you see? And I'm totally unprepared. It's like, how do I explain to them when they don't dive what I see? So I got me thinking, I'll
Speaking of that,
I'll mention eels and sea lions and seals and
and
nudibranchs.
speaking of that, I actually had two other stories that I did during the presentation, and one of them is at San Carlos Beach. My buddy and I were coming in from a dive. It was about sunset, and there's this big patch of kelp, and I went around the right side of the kelp. He went around the left side of the kelp, and he didn't pop out. It's like, well, where's my buddy, right? And so I go around and start looking for him, and I go, oh, there he is. He's like heading out to sea. It's like, what the heck's going on? So I start following him, and it turns out it's not my buddy. It's a great white shark.
Oh,
So I was like, well, this is even better. So then I start kicking a little harder. And anyway, so I follow the shark for a little while, and then it kind of moves off, and then I go back in. And I catch up to my buddy on shore, and I go, did you see the shark? It's like, no, I didn't see it. And I have another one that's kind of similar. Once again, it was at San Carlos Beach. He and I are out there doing a night dive, and there's this really strange surge that's happening. So normally what happens is a surge, you'll get pushed one way, and then you get pulled back. You'll get pushed and pulled roughly the same distance, right? And there's this really strange surge that was happening. It was kind of only really pushing one way. And so I kind of made note of it earlier in the dive, and then we're out there, and I found this really interesting nudibranch, and I took some pictures of it, and then I pointed it out to my dive buddy, and then I turn around, and there's this gray wall. It's a 25-foot baby gray whale. It's like 2 feet away from me, and so I try to get my buddy's attention. He's really focused on this nudibranch, and basically he misses the 25-foot.
Oh, wow.
So it's the same buddy. He missed the great white shark, and he missed the baby gray whale.
Does that always happen when you have your macro lens on?
I had my macro lens, yeah. Thank for both of them, probably for the great white shark and for the whale.
So if
Sounds
you're
like a
looking
great
for-
buddy to have, though. It seems like some cool stuff comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. if you're looking for feedback, one part of the presentation I think you could add more to was, I think you only pointed it out kind of in passing, but the difference between the bay and the ocean. And you could even show it on a map, and then here's what you see in one environment, here's what you see in the other environment. That's something you could expand on and spend a couple more minutes on if you wanted to. So
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
That was actually one of the things that I was going to say, as well, as particularly for like the sites doing like a local map that shows like, oh, like when you're looking at monastery, show like North Monastery, South Monastery, Middle Reef.
I'd love to see that, like on the ones, there are like a few of them where you're like, hey, there are 6 dive sites here. You could get, one of our earlier speakers had, these underwater dive maps, and you could show that could be on the first slide where you're introducing the dive sites, and then you could show, how far out each of the 6 different sites are from the shore.
Okay. That's a good idea. I like that.
Yep.
And then just, I guess briefly, I'll talk about the scuba show. It's the first time I'd ever been to it. It's always held at Long Beach at the convention center, as far as I know. It was a lot of fun. I'm not actually, it's probably like 150 or maybe more, booths there. I saw there was 3 underwater photographic societies. There was the Orange one, Orange County, there was LA County, and there was San Diego County. But I didn't see NCUPS there. So I looked really hard, but I didn't see it.
We've been there in the past, so it's not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I don't know if we've had booths, but certainly a lot of us go down for it or used to.
Yeah, we used to do a booth, and then we kind of stopped because it got expensive to be in that show. I don't know if they lowered their pricing, but we didn't really get a lot of membership at it. Sometimes I think Helga and Jim, you probably remember even more. Did we ever share a booth sometimes with Orange County even?
We've shared a booth with Backscatter.
Yeah, that I remember.
That was at DEMA. I take that back. That was at DEMA.
Yeah. But I remember I worked it once. I actually worked that show twice, once for Backscatter and once for NCUPS. So I'm trying to think, but we didn't have our own booth. I might have been in Allison's booth that year when she was just starting Dive with Pink. Because we went twice, Brad, right? So,
yeah, I think so. It'd be fun to go again.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of there's dive shops there from all over the world. There's resorts there. Sometimes you can get good deals on resort travel. For example, my wife and I are kind of looking at let me see, Palau trip that is about 25% off or whatever. So that might work out good for us. There was one product that I thought was kind of interesting. I've been kind of anti scooter. I don't really want to get a scooter. I haven't wanted, but they had one that was like about the size of kind of a large water bottle. It weighed like 5 pounds, and theoretically it could tow you around. And
is that the Pegasus?
No, it was
No.
it was called the company was called Lefeet, Lefeet, and it was called an S1 Pro, I believe. It was like $800, so it's like way cheaper than a lot of the other ones, and it's like, wow, I'm actually kind of interested in it. And it weighed like 5 or 6 pounds, and I don't know. I'm just worried it might be like one of those things where it's a little too good to be true.
About how many people do they get at that show now? Was it pretty well attended, or?
I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of people there.
There were a lot of people there. Yeah.
There were a lot. I don't know the numbers, but the place was really crowded.
How many people came to your talk?
I had like maybe 35 or so.
Okay.
So I thought that was decent.
Yeah, I think that's about what you'd expect for, at least the last, I went to the show a long, long time ago, but that was similar to the numbers they used to have there.
And I guess I didn't realize, but they have paid presentations and they have free ones. So the free ones
Right.
are like, the dive resorts, they're kind of like they're kind of talking about their dive resorts. Those are the
Yeah.
free ones. And then,
Yeah.
mine, for example, was one of the paid ones. So you actually
Yeah,
have
you're not going to get a ton of people paying for the ticket to see the extra pay presentations, and so
right.
the kind of numbers you got were typical, over the last couple when I went there, like in the 90s, for example. So the show's been around for quite a while.
So my wife and I attended the show. Well, actually, we drove out a day early. We went diving Catalina on Friday, and then we attended the show on Saturday and Sunday. So it was a lot of fun.
How'd you like the Catalina diving compared to the Northern California diving?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How did you like Catalina compared to what you're used to in Monterey Bay?
Well, it's warmer. It was 63 degrees, so it was
Yeah.
way warmer than
Yeah.
Monterey. There's not as much diversity, I don't think, in Catalina compared to here. I mean, the rocks were rocks. They weren't like just totally covered with invertebrates like you see around here. I did see a school of barracuda. I mean, that's something I've never seen in Monterey. It was kind of cool. And like I said, I don't think they have as much diversity down there of species.
If you can
Right.
get out to Farnsworth Banks, which is near, it's like an island, not an island, it's an underwater island near Catalina.
Yeah.
That's a lot like Monterey.
Yeah, I've been on, I think, at least 3 boats, and we were intending to go to Farnsworth, and they get out there and they go, oh, the conditions aren't right. We're going to turn around. And so I've been, shut out at least 3 times.
Someone just fell against her.
So I've never made it out there yet. So that's all I had.
That was great.